We are going to have to talk about some controversial subjects that surround your personal brand and the company brand. So do you really care Qatar is holding the World Cup? Is it because in the end it all sells beer?
Oh, wow. Just straight in with that one.
Right.
Okay. Well, Brewdog's CEO is James Watt.
Brewdog has built a global business on a heady mix of beer and branding.
We've now got operations in 55 countries. We've got 125 locations. We've gone from 2 humans and a dog to 3,000 members of the team.
People can criticise you all day long, but I don't think anyone can criticise you for a second about marketing. When you're sitting there brainstorming a marketing thing, how do you come up with these ideas? You are getting a hard time in the press at the moment. Big companies do have PR companies that work on getting the word out for them. Do you think they have companies that work on making sure they undermine the competition? James, it's great to have you here. Let's kick off by asking the question I know you like to ask in your management meetings, which is, what is the 3 most difficult things, challenges you're facing right now in the business?
Oh, wow. Just straight in with that one.
Right.
Okay. The biggest challenges we've got at the moment, just the financial climate. So I think we're facing the biggest economic crisis we have for a generation. Cost of goods, input costs, energy bills are off the charts. It costs us 34% more to make a case of beer now than it did this time last year. And at the same time, the consumer has got less money to spend. So that's a huge challenge for us. Second challenge is, how do we keep the mission, the passion, the focus on beer when we've gone from 2 humans and a dog to we've now got operations in 55 countries. We've got 125 locations all around the planet. We've got 3,000 members of the team. So how do we keep that culture, that passion, so that every time a consumer has an experience with us, it is an absolutely amazing experience? And third biggest challenge, I've been so focused in the first 2. Third biggest challenge, I would say, would be trying to take consumers with us on our sustainability journey. So I fully believe in 5 years' time, the leading business in any category is going to be the most sustainable one. And I believe that consumers, in terms of how they spend their money, have got more power to positively impact the planet than how they vote, because politicians are going to be capable to help us solve climate change. But at the moment, there's so much misinformation. The consumer is not quite there yet, but the sooner that happens, the sooner we can do more to kind of help save our home planet. So trying to find a way to take customers with us when it comes to sustainability would be the third one.
I wonder if I was sitting in a management meeting with you and I told you those 3 things. Yeah. They're so big. They're so big, these problems. There must be problems in the supply chain, for example. There must be problems with, people quitting and not opening up the outlets, or, people stealing money, all these micro problems, I guess, right, that your management probably face. Do you feel like it's your role as the CEO to look at these big problems, or do you have to do both?
Have to do both. You mentioned people stealing money. Like, remember the first time that happened to us? I was just like, fuck, whoa, really? And any company of scale, it's going to happen, but what a kick in the teeth the first time. It feels like they're stealing from you personally, which they are. So, that was a big kick in the teeth the first time that happened. So, no, I think any business leader, I think there's this big misconception, everyone wants to start up a business and they think it's all these fun things. 95% of it is going from hard problem to challenge to difficult thing. And I think the key thing is to do that without any loss of optimism and enthusiasm, but you kind of just bounce from challenge to challenge to challenge. And as CEO, it's your job to lean into those challenges. And I think the best CEOs do that. And I think weaker CEOs focus on the fun, the shiny, the exciting things. And they're so important. You can only focus on them if you lean into the challenges, if you fix the difficult things, because that's what gives you the platform to go on and do something amazing. And I always find the biggest growth for us as a business, or for me personally, is by leaning into the difficult things. It's always the hard thing that creates the value.
I think that's such great advice. I think people listening, I know a lot of our listeners, they dream of starting a business, and they do hear about, the fancy houses and cars and lifestyle. And, you've got a beautiful office here, for example. This is people's dream, bowling alley and playing pool and going down the slide, all the stuff you've got here. But, like you say, it's not easy being a leader. So what makes you carry on? What makes you, after, all this time, started when you're 23, you're now 40, right?
Yeah.
Jesus, why?
Because I absolutely love it. It's I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And we are so, so passionate about the beer that we make. So our mission is to share that passion with as many people as we possibly can. That was our mission when we set up the company in 2007. It's still our mission today. But we also want to build a new and a different type of company, a company that gives back, a company that looks after the planet, and a company that finds new and innovative business models that can update the status quo and hopefully move business on. So for instance, we are part owned by 220,000 investors, but for us, they're advocates, they're ambassadors, they're the heart and soul of our business, and we pioneered that as a business model. This location that we're sitting in is one of over 120 on the planet, and each of these locations share 50% of the profits that we generate equally with the team who works here. It's a whole new business model for hospitality. And then as a business, we're the world's first carbon negative beer business, meaning we take twice the carbon out of the air that we emit every single year. So I'm excited about sharing the passion for beer because we love beer. And I'm excited about doing things differently and putting my heart and soul into building a business that myself and my amazing team can be really proud that we're part of.
Yeah. Maybe you don't know this, or maybe you do. I've invested in a business called Table Yeti, and when I paid here for my drinks today, that was the payment system I was using, and part of Tip Jar partnership. And so not only are you, I guess, employing a lot of people, providing a lot of support to people, you're actually also helping companies like Table Yeti who are trying to produce a better tip system, a better way of people getting benefits. You're also supporting businesses like that through partnerships, which I think is pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And as well as running this, like I am a business geek through and through. I get excited about business ideas. I get excited about new startups. I get excited about people who want to do things differently. So to be able to support those types of entrepreneurs and businesses in our ecosystem is something I'm very passionate about too.
Yeah, I can see it. So we are going to have to talk about some controversial subjects that surround your personal brand and the company brand. But before we do that, I wanted, for those that don't already know your story, if you haven't listened to the Stephen Bartlett podcast, for example, and don't know your story, and that was a brilliant podcast, by the way. I felt you were very transparent and open. I really enjoyed it, and anyone listening should probably go listen to that podcast. But I don't want to cover all the ground in that podcast. There's a lot of ground covered. I wanted to go into some other things with you. And one of the things I noticed in all the comments of people commenting on that podcast was a lot of people. There seems to be almost like a divide amongst those that are true believers and love the controversy, I guess, that you bring to the table. And then there's those that feel, hey, I think one comment, for example, you cried once in his whole career. That was one of the things you mentioned in the podcast. Lucky you, I think I cry every day, so there's a lack of maybe disconnect some people feel between what you're doing and how people feel on the street. What did you feel about all of that when it all came out?
We've been no stranger to controversy at all. Ever since 2008, we've had detractors, we've had knockers, we've been high profile, but have people who love what we do and people who hate what we do. And we've always been so transparent. Like, this is what we do. This is what we stand for. This is what we believe in. We wear our heart in our sleeve. We take stands for the things that we're passionate about. We've got a voice. We like to use it. Some people like that. Some people don't. But for us, it's about doing something that we love, being true to who we are and seeing where the journey takes us.
I guess let's talk about the voice for a minute. So I'm a marketing person myself. So I'm always fascinated by people that do marketing brilliantly. And I think you do marketing brilliantly, in my opinion. I'm going to get some hate in the comments now. People start telling I'm selling out by saying this to you. I'm saying, but I really do think your marketing is amazing. I guess sometimes with marketing, and I have it in my own platform too, it can come across as you're using that subject to get beer sales. So do you really care Qatar is holding the World Cup, and does it matter? Or how did that meeting happen? When you sit in the group together with your team, you say, right, well, let's be the anti-sponsor, which is brilliant. Yeah. And you're going to say, right, we believe this thing about Qatar. How does that end up playing out in the boardroom? Do you guys not think, well, we could be, affecting a market for ourselves? It could be damaging the brand long term if we go this way.
No, not at all. And we 100% care. The human rights abuses in putting that together were catastrophic. Qatar's record when it comes to human rights is abysmal. The Qatari World Cup was the single biggest detrimental event for climate change outside of a war that humans have created. And every other corporate company just wanted to brush all of that under the carpet and put a shiny logo on it. And for us, that is fundamentally wrong. So we want to be a force for good. We want to show that business can be a force for good. And if people don't stand up and kind of take a stance when things like this happen, then they just become normal and it can't become it can't become normal. So we felt so passionate about taking a stand. It wasn't about making money in any way, shape, or form. All profits from Lost Lager during the period of the World Cup went to charities which fight climate change. It's something we felt we had to do as a team. It's something I would do over and over and over and over again. Some people liked it, some people didn't. And for us, like, if you try and keep everyone happy, you're just going to blend into like insignificant, callous indifference. We know what we're about. We felt we should take a stand, and we're very happy with the stand that we took as a company.
I think this is key for people listening who doubt your motives. If it's genuine and you really believe in it, then I think it's the right thing to do. Yeah. I think I don't know, sitting in a boardroom saying, right, well, let's go against Qatar. The conversation must come up. Well, if they stop selling our beer, will it matter? And someone can say, well, they don't even drink beer there, so it doesn't matter. Does that come up? Does that consideration come up?
No, I mean, a lot of things that we do. Like, we're a reasonable sized company at the moment. We do so many things, just like a small company. We're quite fast. We're quite snappy. We're quite nimble with decision making, which is good. But then it also sometimes means we do things that are not maybe thought through as well as they should be. Gold can, a controversy, for example, that would fall into that bucket. And so much of what we do is just kind of me and a very small team, which is amazing because it means we can be nimble and fast. But we do sometimes make mistakes. We hold our hands up when we make mistakes. But just operate in that way is something we've always done as a business.
I think people listening, I mean, one of the things we're on a mission to do, as I mentioned to you off air, is teach people about business for free.
Yeah. And love that mission, by the way.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And I know you giving us time proves that. I appreciate it. I guess, moral code doesn't really come up much in business. I mean, I grew up, it's going to show my age now, where people are like, greed is good. It's all about making money. Tread on people to get ahead, that's business kind of attitude. And how do you make sure that doesn't creep into your culture?
Great question. So we've always tried to build a business differently, and we've always felt that our long-term destiny is determined by how well we look after the amazing people in our business, and we've always wanted to be the best employer we possibly can be. Have we always got that right? No, and I'm happy to admit that. And we've had periods of such high growth. So we broke the record for the fastest growing company over 10 years in the UK, beating Innocent. So we've had year after year after year after, like, so much growth. And anyone who's been in that environment knows you're spinning so many plates to keep things going. In a high growth environment, it's tough, it's dynamic, it's fast. But you can't always do everything. There's times during the high growth periods of the company that we could have done more to look after the fantastic people in our business. And I fully admit that. And it wasn't intentional. It's just because we were so busy keeping the wheels in the bus with their growth. And I think that's a criticism that's been thrown at us, and especially kind of through the period of kind of 2016 to 2018. We accept that, and we've put so many things in place since that criticism to continue to make us a fantastic employer. Like I said, we now share 50% of our profits in our bars with the amazing people we work at. No other company on the planet does that. It's a whole new business model for hospitality. I gave a huge chunk of my equity in the company, worth almost 100 million, equally to the salaried paid team members. So that means everyone gets £30,000 of equity each year on top of their salary. Again, no other people do that. So we're always going to be fast paced. We're always going to be quite demanding. But we want to take our team with us on the journey, and we want to reward them for all the hard work they do in the business. And we recently did an anonymous staff survey and we scored way higher than everyone else in our industry, and a whole host of metrics that show the kind of progress that we've made in that area from some of the kind of tougher periods during our high growth years.
I mean, I spent the last few days a little bit absorbed in your world, putting myself in your shoes. As I said earlier, reading the comments on people's opinions and voices, and it's hard to please all of the people all of the time, isn't it?
Unless you're giving away free ice cream, yes.
Yeah. Which I feel like sometimes the way you rebuttal, you're kind of giving away free ice cream. You're actually trying to fix the planet, make a good working environment. Can you keep giving out free ice cream to try and prove this model can work? I mean,
I definitely wouldn't say we're giving out free ice cream in our model. So we like to look after our people, but we're a fast-paced company where it can get quite intense at times. So we want to make sure that we recognize that through the share options, through the profit share that we put in place. For me, the planet thing is just something that's not even optional anymore. We're facing an existential climate crisis. I think the solution has to come from business, and we want to lead the way on that and help hopefully ensure that other businesses can follow in that footstep. But for me, it's like companies have to do this. We've got a responsibility to ourselves and future generations to do that. And we want to build a different type of business. And for us, that is what a different type of business looks like. It looks like it's community owned. It looks like it gives back and rewards its staff in a way that's more engaged and involved in other companies, and one that looks after the planet as well.
I think there's a slight problem in society, and I'd love your opinion on this, because when I look at what you're trying to do with the business, you are bucking the trend on how business is built. I think you are building a business that's a little bit different. I had a friend who used to work for a very big bank. He quit that bank. He was earning £2 million a year at that bank, and he opened up a homeless shelter. And part of that model, because he's a very smart guy, is he got sponsors and partners, and he's got 3 kids. And he decided that he was going to make it an income-based model. And he personally pays himself £110,000 a year to cover all his expenses and have an okay life. And he gets so much shit for that. It's almost like he helps 200 people a month get shelter. And if he was still he wouldn't be doing that. So he's gone and taken a pay cut. He's doing something good. The amount of shit he gets for paying himself, he gets told he's using the homeless, which it literally makes him cry. And I feel like the society, if he was just in the bank, I almost named the bank then, I'll probably get sued, and just doing whatever he wanted in the bank and making loads of money for himself, he'd be praised as he showed off his Ferrari in his big house in France. And yet those that step into the arena to do something different are more scorned than those that don't. So the companies that aren't doing anything get no shit about it. Now, I'm not defending you for those that start having a go at me. I'm posing it to you that, is it because in the end it all sells beer?
Well, I mean, ultimately we are a business, and we don't pretend we're anything but a business. We want to be a business that showcases that business is a force for good. But ultimately, if we don't sell beer, I'm back working in the deck of a fishing boat, and the 3,000 fantastic team members that we've got don't have a job. So, I mean, let's be transparent. Let's be real. We are here to sell beer as a company, and we want to do as much good as we can along the way and build a new type of business. But without the selling of beer, there is no business. Yeah, no, and I'm building a platform that helps people for free, and I'm now looking for product to sell to fund the product, so I can help people for free. Right, the good people, you need to pay them. And there's a cost to come with a purpose, right? You can't have a goal. I actually think that's the problem with charity models, actually. They hold their hand out, and then when COVID comes and there's no more money, the charities stop, right? So you're building a model I really believe in. I guess the skeptics out there, will look at it a certain way. I think for people listening, this is what I'd love to get into today. I'd love them to learn a little bit about how purpose comes about in a business, because you started off with, I think, a quite simple purpose, which is you love craft beer and you wanted to champion craft beer. It seems to have escalated from there. So, tell us a little, I mean, without covering past podcast content, I know in the early days, your of course, family life was a big impact on you, but as you come up with this craft beer idea, why craft beer? Why was it so important? Why is it such an important thing? So it's something that myself and Martin, who I set the business up with, we just absolutely love. So I was working as captain of a North Atlantic fishing boat at the time. So I studied law at university. I got a job in a legal office. I worked there for 2 weeks in a cheap suit, and I just hated it. And I thought, I'm not going to spend my life sitting here doing what is essentially glorified admin. And I kind of saw myself sitting there in 40, 50 years' time doing exactly the same thing. And after 2 weeks, I just thought, I'm out. I need to do something completely the opposite of this. So I worked for 7 years in the North Atlantic fishing boat, which gave me a great education in teamwork, in adversity, in people leadership. And I loved my time in the Atlantic. And during that time, myself and Martin became really passionate about beer, and our hobby was trying to copy our favorite American beers in Martin's mum's garage. And we eventually decided to get a small bank loan, cobble together our life savings. So in 2007, we set the business up with £30,000 of life savings, a £20,000 bank loan, and a big mission to make other people's passionate about fantastic beer as we are. And for us, we saw the beer market as commoditized, homogenized, lowest common denominator, industrial, mass market, insipid beers made by global behemoths that didn't care about the product anymore. So we wanted to put the taste, the passion, the flavor, the artisan craftsmanship back into people's beer glasses and just open their eyes to amazing beery experiences that they didn't know existed in a market that was dominated by industrial lagers. And we love beer for how it takes people together, for the story of how long it's been part of our civilization, for the kind of fresh, simple, natural ingredients, just 4 ingredients in pretty much all of our beers that make it. And then the sensory, taste, flavor experiences that we can give people with those ingredients, from a big, decadent, opulent imperial stout you sip at and kind of contemplate life by a fireside, to a kind of sharp, hoppy, bitter American-style IPA, to a kind of crisp, classic German-style Pilsner, to a kind of mouth-puckeringly acidic sour beer. So we wanted to give people that whole spectrum of experiences. And that was the genesis of our company. And that's still kind of our main focus today, is to kind of share that passion for beer with as many people as we can. And it's been amazing how much the beer market has changed since 2007. 2007, draft beer in the UK, not a thing. Like, nobody knew what that was, what the hell you were speaking about. They would just look at what kind of beer. So it's been amazing to be part of this kind of wave of change in the UK and Europe. And as we've evolved as a company, we've very much wanted to share that passion for beer, but also show that business can be a force for good. And if I'm summarizing what we do in a sentence, it's share the passion for fantastic beer and showcase that business can be a force for good. If that's in terms of how we look after, how we reward the fantastic team members that we've got, if that's showcasing that we can be community owned and continue to grow, if that's showcasing what we do for the planet, if that's showcasing us taking a stand for the things that we believe in, which we've been doing all the way since 2012, that is what we're about as a company. So focus on amazing beers and showcase that business can be a force for good. And that's what myself and my amazing team are fully focused on today and for the next decade.
I think people listening, starting with that passion and that purpose, a lot of people don't start with passion. They start with a market gap, right? They say, well,
if you start with a market gap, you have lost before you get out of the gates. Unless you're starting a business with passion, it is game over. It is so insanely difficult. You're going to get so many knocks, so many kicks, so many rejections. You're going to get turned down so many times. You're going to face so many challenges. Like 90% of businesses fail in the first 2 years unless you've got that passion. And passion is the only thing that can pull you through something that's difficult. So I speak to a lot of people that are setting up a business, and if they don't, if it almost don't cut and you bleed that passion, you're not passionate enough to start a business.
I couldn't agree more, but it's amazing how many businesses start without it. It's and by the way, it's not 90% that fail in the first 2 years. It's 23% fell in the first year, 64% fell in the first 3 years. Okay. So I'm pretty sensitive about that number, because I worry people hear that and don't start a business. Okay. And what's really exciting is that the people that do start a business, even if it fails, what an experience it is, right? I personally failed many times and I still made it. Yeah. If I hadn't failed, you haven't really failed yet, have you? You've gone this.
We fail every single day.
Yeah, so, good point. Yeah, but as a business, it's not like I've had businesses collapse. It's the end of the business. You've had that many times. You've just launched a YouTube channel, by the way. I just noticed. Yes, yeah. So I put the links down below. What is the purpose of your YouTube channel? What are you trying to achieve with that?
Quite similar to what you're doing. So I want to showcase what it is actually like running a high growth international business that came from a startup. So what challenges we face, how I approach my day-to-day, what are my productivity hacks, how do I run meetings, how do I build things with a team, what business expansion things are we working on, just to kind of share business passion, business knowledge with as many people as I can. Yeah,
I've just consumed all your content recently, and I want to talk about the apple and the pin in a minute, but I guess the gist I'm trying to get across here is ultimately, if you're building a business with purpose today, how big does the purpose have to be? Now, if I'm being kind of critical, I would say, well, there's a lot of beer out there. I asked all my colleagues about, your beer. They all love it. But they also say sometimes, being honest, what's the difference between your beer and someone else, especially now in a crowded market? What's the difference? Maybe 2007, 2008, you could say it was unique. Yeah. But now, you're almost becoming the original enemy that you had in sights when you started, right? You become a big, successful company. So does that not, worry you a little bit?
I think globally, our business is less than 0.15% of the beer market. We are still absolutely tight. I mean, we're inconsequential in the scheme of the beer market. And
how much is Heineken? Do you know their size of the market?
I would need to check. I would say it's kind of low teens. I would guess, but I'm not 100% sure. But for us, if you look at the beer market, still 85% of beer sold in the UK is mass market industrial lager. And I think it's easy to get caught in a bubble of good beer, but the vast majority of beer drunk in the UK is still...
Well, what determines good beer? I mean, like from a product point of view, what's the difference? Isn't it price driven, a lot of those sales?
I don't think so. I mean, for me, price is a fantastic thing. If you look at the world's best wines, you pay 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times more than you would pay for a basic wine. If you look at the world's best beers, they cost twice as much as a basic beer. So that value proposition when it comes to good beer for me is off the charts. You can get the world's best beers by paying twice what you'd pay for a kind of everyday mainstream lager. And for me, what makes a good beer? So firstly, a beer that's not pasteurized. So much of industrial beer is pasteurized. This means it's cooked in the can. They do that to prevent infection because their systems are not clean enough to do it without it, but it essentially destroys the taste and the flavor of beer before it gets to consumer. And how many consumers who are opening a can of mainstream beer know that it's been cooked in the can before it's got to them, which is just bizarre. No preservatives, no additives, no adjuncts. So many industrial beers, because malted barley is quite expensive, they'll use rice and corn and sugar syrups as adjuncts to make the beer cheaper. Beer needs a certain amount of time in tank to age, to develop, to mature, for the kind of flavors to integrate. So for me, good beer is no additives, no adjuncts, no junk, non-pasteurized, with the right amount of time in tank, made by people who love good beer. And I think if you're making a beer, you set out to do one of two things. You can either set out to do something amazing or set out to do something as cheaply as you can. And about 85% of the beer market is dominated by companies that set out to make something as cheaply as they can. However, the percentage of people that love good beer and are buying good beer is growing and growing. So it's exciting to see how that beer market is changing.
I think, to be honest, having looked for all your website and all of the different materials, I mean, that description you've just given me there makes me thirsty, first of all, makes me want to try your product.
Well, we have some about 25 meters that way, so we can totally do that.
Here's a bizarre thing. It'll be the first time I've ever drunk beer. I have never drunk beer.
In your life?
My whole life.
Wow.
Yep. And so I'm sure my girlfriend, when I was 15 years old now, would jump on the comments and say, no, he had a beer with me once. No, I didn't. We had a glass of gin. I've never drunk beer. One of those things. I think that luckily I've got lots of friends who drink beer. So I got to drive them places. So that was always good. They invited me to all the parties because I could drive. I think I learned the power of not drinking that time. But I think a lot of the time when we're talking about, marketing, the actual marketing can overshadow the product. So when I think about your brand and the people I've asked about your brand, it's the marketing they talk about, and the brand. Brewdog gets mentioned as a brand, but I feel like the product gets lost in all of that.
I think that's a fair comment, and our market has definitely evolved. But our starting point was we are a tiny startup fighting to stay alive, and we are in an industry dominated by global behemoths that spend hundreds of millions of pounds every single year on advertising, on market. And so for us to stand out, for us to go beyond two humans and a dog, we're going to have to find a way to do things differently. And if we don't, like, there's no way we can survive in this market. So it's always been about using social media, doing things which are sometimes provocative, sometimes which are a little bit controversial, all underpinned by purpose, but all designed to, with no budget, compete in a market dominated by behemoths with hundreds of millions of dollars of budget. And that has worked. That has been successful. That has helped us build the business that we have. And that is part of our DNA. It's a great
David Goliath marketing story, right? Yeah. But what happens when you get a little bit bigger than David? You're by the way, your point about the amount of beer you sell doesn't reflect, in my opinion, the outsized image of your brand. The upstarts today see you as the enemy.
And that's the bizarre thing. The marketing has almost been too successful in that we're still tiny in the overall scheme of things in the global beer market. But because the marketing has landed so well, people think we're much bigger than we are. So that's something we speak about internally as well. Some of the things we could do when we were smaller, even though we're still small, we can't do because people think we're much bigger than we are. So it's quite an unusual concept to grapple with, and it's one that we can grapple with externally. But we've got this kind of huge awareness for us is up there with awareness levels of the big beer companies, whereas sales, because what we do is quite niche, it's for connoisseurs, aficionados, sales are way, way, way less, but then awareness is at the same level, which means we are still David versus Goliath, but we've almost got the PR of Goliath, which puts us in an odd place. Yeah,
in some respects, other beer brands don't have a face I can comment on. You've become probably, in my opinion, one of the most famous faces for beer. I mean, other beers, I can't even think of they use celebrities and other people to kind of promote their brands, right? But, people it's like back to my point earlier about sometimes if you have a purpose, you kept your head down, didn't have a purpose and just sold beer, probably wouldn't be so bad. But the outside, you are now almost intimidating the bigger brands, aren't you?
Well, and I think we've been intimidating the bigger brands for a very, very long time. So if I take you back to, this was 2011. So we entered a award for Scottish Bar Operator.
Yeah, I know this story from Steve Bartlett's podcast. Yeah. So,
okay.
Right, so it's a good story. And by the way, I was impressed that they apologized to you.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they could easily deny that. And you know, for those that are listening and don't want to go listen to an hour and a half on Steve Bartlett's podcast, which you should, by the way, because it's a great podcast. The basic is, you were given an award, and then a famous Diageo, right? Diageo said, don't give it to them, or we'll cut the sponsorship, which is awful. So what about this then? What about this as a conspiracy theory? I hate conspiracy theories. I think they don't exist. It's all about following the money. But you are getting a hard time in the press at the moment. When I read the media coverage about you, I always feel like, and I don't know, I'm going to guess why, but I wanted to hear why you think, why are they giving you such a hard time? If you're this David, which most people love David, and up against the Goliaths, these the evil ones. Why are they against you? And do you think they are against you?
That's a great question. It's something I think about a lot myself as well. I mean, we are so clickable as a company. So we've got such a big reputation. People know the story. People know what's behind it. And I think the media has fundamentally changed. So if you look at the media today, it's no longer about circulation. It is about clicks. So clicks is what the media win or lose on. And the more clickbaity a headline is, the more clicks they get and the more revenue they get. So you've now got this bizarre situation where the person who writes the article doesn't write the headline. The headline is written by someone else, and the headlines are designed to get as many clicks as they can. And because our name is so high profile, our name being in a headline ensures it gets clicks. So what we've got at the moment as well is often this massive disconnect between articles which are fair and balanced and headlines which are terrible, but then most people just see the headlines, and these headlines are designed to get clicks. So for me, we're very high profile. When the media covers us, they get lots of clicks. How the media works is fundamentally changed, and the headlines very often don't reflect the body of the articles, but then nobody reads the body of the articles. They just look at the headlines.
Well, the way it used to work, because I used to have an agency and we used to work with CNN and other companies. And, I've been in meetings where these big brands will say, well, we can't say anything negative about that company because it's owned by this person and that person pays us a lot of advertising revenue. So maybe your marketing method has pissed a lot of media platforms off. And maybe they sit in a room and say, well, we can go at this company because we're not going to lose ad revenue if we do.
I think that's a great point, and I would say that's definitely part of the mix as well.
I mean, without getting into conspiracy theories, I wonder, big companies do have PR companies that work on, getting the word out for them. Do you think they have companies that work on making sure they undermine the competition?
100%. And I think if you look at us in the media over the last few years, there's definitely a few underhand things happening. There's definitely a lot of crazy things happening, and there's definitely a lot of things happening that's not in the public domain. I mean, recently I won a landmark case in the highest court in Scotland that showed I was the victim of malicious falsehoods being spread by online fraud accounts and fraud in a landmark case. So there's a lot of people with vendettas against our companies, which are based on lies and fallacies. Then they use underhand illegal means to promote those lies and fallacies online. Mm-hmm. Which is part, when you set up a company, you never expect to be in that.
No, well, I mean,
that position. It's like, what point does success become not worth it anymore?
And at some point, when you're not starting an oil company, right? Ultimately, you started a somewhat non-controversial business. Really, you might someone have a beer and have a good time, right? It's not rocket science, is it? It shouldn't be so controversial.
Yeah. And here's a great example, and something that if I get annoyed about, it's something like this. So from a sustainability perspective, we have worked with Professor Mike Berners-Lee, one of the world's leading experts when it comes to sustainability. And he has got so much integrity and knowledge when it comes to sustainability. We've built our strategy when it comes to sustainability hand in hand with him. Every 6 months we do a report which is third-party audited with all of our numbers. So it's got the transparency, the carbon footprint of various parts of our business. We've invested £50 million in reducing our carbon footprint. We've taken on 10,000 acres of land in the Scottish Highlands where we're planting over 1 million trees to take carbon out of the air. 10,000 acres is bigger than 17 actual countries. It's an amazing project and something that we're very passionate about. So we have worked with the best expert. We have been completely transparent. We've gone way over and above almost any other business in this space. We've spent so much money on it. And in my view, and in the view of one of the leading experts on the planet, we have done things transparent, correctly, no cheap quality offsets that all the controversy is about at the moment, and really invested behind something we've believed in. How the media have twisted that and attacked us with that. From a media perspective, we would have been 100 times better off if we hadn't done it, because the media have just, like the Forest project in Scotland, for instance, this 20 million project, we've been hammered because we're taking less than 10% of that comes from the government, which is in place for those kind of schemes and stuff. But it's so bizarre. So we're spending a huge amount of money to fight for the planet, way beyond what other companies are doing. In how the media have portrayed it, would have been much better off if we were purely judging ourselves from a PR perspective on not doing that. And it's so bad because it disincentivizes other companies
and people to be doing good. To do
and
then shout about it.
Thing. Yeah.
And I can also get quite. I can tell you get a little bit worked up about this, and I understand. Yeah. It's very frustrating, isn't it? But we've seen it play out with people like Elon Musk, like Tesla. I've got a Tesla. People are like, oh, well, you're still burning fossil fuels, filling up your car, aren't you? Yeah. Well, I actually now managed to get solar panels on my house. It's a process, isn't it? It's a process. Now I've got solar panels on my house. So actually my car is being charged by my solar panels, right? So it took time because there was a 7-month waiting list for solar panels. So initially, yes, I was probably using electricity, burning coal. I think that's the other thing, isn't it? When I look at what you did there, in a way, your marketing was ahead of your execution. So a lot of people were doubting that it was actually happening because they weren't understanding the process of the rollout, getting the land, doing the different bits and pieces you're doing. Is that fair to say?
I don't think so, because at every single stage, and I'll send you a link so you can read them, we published a 30 to 40 page report that went into almost excruciating detail on the stages we were at with various projects. So we've been so
But people don't read those reports, right?
Yes,
Is that what it is? So the newspapers say it's not actually happening, and they're not reading the report to know that it's all happening slowly but surely.
So people don't, but you would expect a responsible journalist to provide a fair and honest opinion to read that report, but they conveniently don't because they want to attack us instead. And get clicks.
Yeah, and get clicks. So if I wonder if there is a need for all the people that are doing purpose to get together a little bit and turn the tide on this, because surely if you lift your head above water and say, like you're doing, like Elon Musk is doing, look, let's do these things for the long-term benefit of the planet, but you get slammed for it. I mean, I was reading the comments about you. People are like, I'm not buying the beer anymore because it's all a lie. And then someone else's brother said it's a lie. And then they've said, oh, is it? I didn't know that. I'm not buying beer anymore. So it self-perpetuates that you probably internally go, you've got shareholders now, right? I mean, I read you've only got 46% between you and Martin now, something like that. You don't have majority control. So if your shareholder said, look, let's stop this because we're losing sales, it becomes economical. That's scary, right? How do you stop that from happening? Can you stop that from happening?
For us, it's not about stopping things from happening. It's about doing what we believe in, and like our board, our shareholders are fully aligned with our sustainability objective. They understand why we have to do this for the planet. They understand why it's important to us as a company. And my only frustration is that we have invested close to 70 million between electrification of vehicle fleets, reforestation on our own piece of land that we can control, to turning our wastewater into biomethane green gas that powers our system and powers vehicles. And with how it's been portrayed in the media, we would have been much better from a brand perspective if we hadn't put everything on the line and invested 70 million to help save our home planet. That is the only frustration with it.
You need to get DiCaprio to come and do a documentary on you. And because I think this sort of thing is really important, actually, that these things should be highlighted as the benchmark of what other companies should do. Yeah. Not negative press. Oh my God, sales dropped 25%. Let's definitely not do that. Right?
Yeah. And if I'm being honest, like what we do from a sustainability perspective is amazing, but it's not enough to move the needle. What we need is loads of businesses, and I fully believe the solution to climate change is going to be the best businesses working hand in hand with the leading scientists to put solutions in place. So our sustainability mission only works if other businesses join us and look to do the same as well. But if we are one of the first businesses to do it and we get attacked in the media for doing the right thing, it's a huge disincentive for other businesses to make changes. And like, let's be honest, like we are facing an existential climate crisis. Huge changes needed to help us save our home planet. That's not huge change in 2030, 2040, 2050. Huge changes needed today, which is why we put everything online, which is why we became carbon negative. We're fully certified carbon negative, and we need other businesses to change. But the media acting how they act disincentivizes other businesses to do what they need to do from a sustainability perspective.
Very true. It's interesting when we say save the planet. In reality, it's save the human race. It's not save the planet. The planet will be fine when we're gone. It gets a bit warmer, the planet will still be here.
Yeah.
We'll be gone.
Yes.
So I think that's one thing people need to realize. It's not really saving the planet, it's saving us. If you want to think about it as a selfish need. I had this theory about when people start a business, and I wondered if this was true for you. It's a test of my theory, which is, I'm sure you wanted to be successful when you were younger. Everyone wants it, right? And I think the theory I have is that want's not enough. You need it. You've got to, no choice. So like people in their 30s that suddenly get fit, it's often because they had a health scare. And if they don't get fit, they're going to have type 1 diabetes and die. So they have to get fit, right? So no choice from the want to the need. Do you feel like you've had a bit of need in you? Is that what's got you to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, bit of a chip in the shoulder, a bit of an inferiority complex, bit of a little voice in my head always saying I'm not good enough. And if I fail, then I just reinforce it and I can't reinforce it. So for me, when we set this, like failure was just not enough. Like I would like die in a ditch rather than have this business fail.
You talked a bit again on Steve's podcast about your mum and how that I also have fallen out with my mum in a major way. My mum was a narcissist. And I found it very hard to cut her out of my life because I felt guilty. I felt like, I should love my mother, right? I should. How did you manage to cut that negativity out of your life?
Great question. It was just always a very, very difficult relationship, and a lot of things happened, and it was just a decision I made. And I haven't spoken to my mum for a very long time, and I guess everyone gets exposed to all types of different humans during their time on this planet, and then they get to decide how they want to spend their time and who they want to spend their time with. And for me, it was just a decision that I made from quite a young age that I just didn't want to happen.
How old were you when you decided that?
17.
17. Yeah. I was 15. So here's my reflection on it, and I wondered if you felt the same, because people listening might have a lot of toxic people around them, and they keep them in their life. Very hard to get rid of toxic people because they're actually almost like an emotional crutch too, right? I mean, in reality, you're still trying to please her, right? If you get into psychology of it, I'm not a psychiatrist, but you know what I mean? Like, you're still trying to make her see that you are a good person, that you are clever, that you are doing good in the world, right?
I would flip that on its head. I'm still maybe trying to prove something to myself, but maybe that seed was planted by her.
Well, the first 7 years of our lives is all subconscious, isn't it? Everything my son hears me say to him is what he ends up believing. So if she's telling you, you're not good enough, you could do better, that's what's driving you now, right? I'm not a psychiatrist, but my main point around the business structure of this is like, you mentioned it before in Steve's podcast. You said, very briefly, luck. I had luck. I think bad luck can turn out to be good luck over time, and good luck can turn out to be bad luck over time. What's your view on luck?
I would 100% echo that, and I would almost say as well, like, the toughest things are almost always the biggest opportunities. So, for instance, some of the bad press that we had around about how we were as an employer during those kind of high growth years from 2016 to 2018, that was really tough at the time. It was painful to hear that feedback. It was tough to think that we let some people down on their journey with us. It was tough to think that we didn't live up to our mission of being the best employer we could be. And what I was saying to the team was, let's make sure that when we look back on this painful episode in 5-10 years' time, it is a catalyst for us to get better. It is a catalyst for growth. We use it to put things in place that helps us ultimately become a better company. And if you look at some of the things that we've done because of that, we've got the 50% profit share, which is unique. We've got the £100 million of equity going to our staff members. Again, at that scale, it is unique. We've now got employee representative groups in place across our business that help and inform every decision that we make when it comes to our team. We've got an anonymous ethics hotline in place across the business. So what was a very painful time for us as a business, I think, has helped us put things in place that helps us become a better business long term.
I say this very delicately because you have a very successful business, far more successful than my business. Yeah. But sometimes when money starts creeping into the equation to help things hold up, like, for example, I have people quit on me and they tell me they want more money. Yeah. And what I discovered was they wanted a deeper purpose. Do you think sometimes the purpose needs to be clearer? Like, if to keep people or bring the right people in the first place? I mean, I know you've worked on this and I've heard you talk about this, but like Steve Jobs would always talk about, like, he wasn't known for his emotional intelligence, you know, he didn't care. It's like, we're going to make a phone that changes the world. I mean, I interviewed Tony Fadell, who actually invented the iPod, and he talked about Steve Jobs, made me cry when he talked about him. But, you know, he's like, he was who he was. I mean, Elon Musk's the same. Are you trying to adapt, or is this who you are, or are you reflective, or is this, you know, just maybe the purpose needs to be a bit clearer?
I think everyone adapts over time, and something that I love from Darwinism, it's not the biggest or the strongest that survive, but it's like the most adaptable, and everything always changes. We're not the same company as we were 5 years ago. The market conditions are not the same as they were 5 years ago. Our customer expectations are not the same as they were 5 years ago. The expectations of our team members are not the same as they were 5 years ago. And for us, I think the purpose is very, very clear. We exist to make other people as passionate about great beer as we are, and showcase that business can be a force for good. I think our team are very aligned on that. And that's kind of always been our kind of purpose and our mission and our passion. And that's what we're focused on as a business. And I almost think like where we get to in 5 or 10 years as a company, it's not about becoming a certain size or doing a certain thing. We almost judge ourselves and, okay, how well do we hold true to the principles that are so important to us? And if we do that, wherever we get to in 5 or 10 years' time is where we're supposed to be. So how much do we focus on making sure that beer quality across the board is absolutely amazing? How much do we focus on looking after the fantastic people in our business? How much do we focus on taking our community with us on this journey? And how much do we focus on doing all we can from a sustainability perspective? And for me, that is success. And if we nail those 4 things, wherever we get to, whatever size we are, is exactly where we're supposed to be. But if we try and compromise on those things to become a certain size, I think that's when we could potentially lose our way as a business.
I have dyslexia, and I often describe it now as a superpower in my life. It was a weakness when I was young. I used to get teased a lot about it. I know you think you've recently identified autism in yourself and ADHD. Do you think it's actually your superpower? Is that where you're at with it at the moment, or are you still analysing it?
Well, just to be clear, I haven't identified it myself. I've gone through the clinical testing, and it's been diagnosed by a doctor, so it's not a self-diagnosis. So the diagnosis came to me quite recently, and I always thought I was just a bit of a odd fish. I always find social situations quite challenging, was always quite happy in my own company, always struggled to read social cues, was always kind of very analytical, always had the ability to kind of sit down and just focus on a task. And I just thought that was like how I was. I had some good qualities and some qualities that were kind of maybe not as developed as other people's in certain areas. And I just thought that was how I was. And then a kind of off the cuff remark by a journalist who said I felt like a semi-autistic former sea captain, actually kind of sent me down it was just to one of our partners, kind of sent me down a rabbit hole, and I decided to get myself diagnosed and found out that I did have, I'm on the autism spectrum and did have ADHD. So working with some specialists at the moment to discover how I can take that knowledge and kind of sharpen up the gifts that come with it, but also kind of work hard on the blind spots and kind of find ways to kind of better regulate my thoughts and emotions in situations that I find difficult. And I'm 40 years old now, and it's quite enlightening and almost a weight off my shoulders to have that diagnosis and understand more about myself. And then how can I use this and work with a specialist that I'm working with to become the best business leader that I can be, the best dad that I can be, and ultimately the best human I can be as well.
You did a great LinkedIn post about it this morning. I think anybody listening, we'll put your LinkedIn down below. I reckon everyone should follow you because you're very transparent and you share what you're thinking, and there's some great knowledge there. Anybody listening who wants to start a business should be following you, I think. But you mentioned in there that maybe Mark Zuckerberg's on this spectrum. And interestingly, when you mentioned that, it made me think a little bit about, he was socially awkward. And he built a social network. There's the irony, right? But meeting you today, I don't get those awkward social cues that you're talking about. That might be, everyone's quirky, like everyone's got their thing, right? So I think that, but maybe that's ironically partly why you're so brilliant at marketing.
There's something that I read a while ago that kind of really resonated with me, and it's the quote was something along the lines of, if you're less likely to read social cues and less likely to care what other people think, you're more likely to be good in business because you're going to do things that other people maybe won't do or won't think about doing and see opportunities that other people wouldn't. So that ability to not care what people think when used the right way can be very, very powerful. And just any business you're starting, you've got to think differently. If you're going to do the same as established businesses in your sector, you've lost the game before you get out the gates, because they're incumbents. They've got more financial firepower and more infrastructure and more resources than you have. So if you're just doing the same, you're going to be a small, weak version of them. You feel whatever you're starting, you've got to take something different, something new, something innovative to that marketplace, be it a new type of product, a new route to market, a new service. It's got to be something different. It's got to be something innovative. And I think people who are more unusual in their thinking and how they're wired maybe have an advantage when coming up with concepts and ideas that are different.
Again, people listening might think they've got weird traits. What happens in the school system, which I think is broken, it teaches people to try and have a broad knowledge of everything instead of doubling down on what they're good at. You did a tweet recently. I won't go into the controversy of it, of course, but you deleted the tweet. Part of me wishes you hadn't. Maybe don't take drugs for what you think is your problem. Double down on it. Maybe your blind spot, and just my opinion, is that you should have brought someone in to do the HR, because you need your army. You've got to care what your army thinks, but perhaps your enemies, you don't need to care what they think, right? So, what do you think of that?
I think you're 100% right. And sometimes, and it's when we're at our worst, we kind of fall into that gap of okay, we might try and please everyone, but we've never been about that as a business. And the people who love us because we take a stand, we stick to our guns, we fight for what we believe in, we're irreverent, we wear our heart in our sleeve, and we're real and we're honest and we're transparent. And if we lose that, we just lose the whole essence of what we are as a company. So I think it's...
So why delete the tweet? Who are you pleasing when you do that? It's what you believed, right? And you were doing something good. Why delete it?
So for me, Twitter recently, Twitter's just becoming a darker and darker place, and we'll post something on Insta and on LinkedIn, other platforms, and the feedback will be fantastic, and the feedback in Twitter and the noise on Twitter. And at that point in time, I just did, and I still left it in all the other social platforms, so it did well.
Wow.
I just didn't want to.
But then the newspapers will use it against you, don't they? Because then I didn't know it was still on other platforms, but then they'll be like, deleted his post from Twitter, almost like name and shaming you for doing something wrong. They don't mention you've kept it up on other platforms and that Twitter's a dark place.
I think with the media and newspapers, if I was walking in the water, they would write an article criticizing me for not being able to swim.
Right. Yeah. But people trust the media. The BBC is meant to be this institution we trust. We can't trust them, right?
We've got a live Ofcom complaint against the BBC, so I can't speak too much about the BBC at the moment.
Yeah, I think as a person, I can. Isn't it bad how the system's got so bad you can't say how you think because of some potential, legal issue? I can say it with all my heart. I don't trust these organisations anymore. When I was younger, newspapers were the things you turned to decide who to vote for. Right, they give you the honest opinion on politicians, right? Because politicians are going to lie to us. It's all gone horribly wrong, isn't it, on that front? Now, so I want to just quickly touch on something a bit more positive. You got an MBE. How did that feel? Did it change your life?
I think the MBE at the moment is currently in my 5-year-old's dressing up box, along with a Jedi outfit and a pirate outfit.
Right.
So I think that's where my MBE was. It was nice to get that. It was nice to get that recognition. It was a nice little moment. Did it change my life in any way, shape, or form? Absolutely not.
What about the 2 books you've written? A lot of people listening might think about writing a book. Has it helped you personally? Has it helped the business? Are you glad you did them? Yeah,
absolutely. So Business for Punks. My first book, it's probably the best-selling book that I did. It's been translated into 37 languages, and I wanted to do a business book that was so different. So many business books are either written by people that have never run a business in their life, which to me just doesn't make sense, or a kind of polished success stories. And I wanted to get something into people's hands. It kind of showed how gnarly and down and dirty and tough starting a business is, and just give them a kind of different take on startup culture and some of the things you need to think about, some of the things you need to do, and just a kind of real look at what it takes to start a business and build a business.
Yeah. You on your YouTube channel, we mentioned it earlier. I was watching one of your videos about how you had no money and you shipped some stuff to America that went off, and suddenly you had no money in the company. Yeah. You got an email from people should go watch the YouTube video. I don't want to ruin it. Just go watch it. But your accountant said you're basically insolvent as a business. Brewdog's over. It's finished, and you were hungry and you went and bought an apple basically with a Brewdog pin. I guess. The story I take, the thing I think you're trying to say in that video when I translate it is that, having no money can be a really good thing. It can help you innovate. It can make you up against the coalface, do things that others won't, right? Or can't, or don't think about because they're not in a desperate need to do it. But if you started a business again today with the money you probably now got in the bank, would you still start at zero?
Yeah, just to go back up a point, I completely agree with what you say. So for me in business, most people, most big businesses especially, but most people see constraints as a disadvantage. For me, constraints are absolutely amazing. So constraints, you should embrace them all day long and use them as kind of beautiful catalytic forces to have you think differently and come up with a different solution. So every time we've had a constraint in our business, for me, it is a gift from God because it forces us to do something different. And I think that story you mentioned just now, that was a constraint. The constraint was we didn't have a single penny of money. We were technically insolvent, completely out of the game as a business. So we had that was the constraint. So we can't pay ourselves. We can't do anything. We can't pay our rent. What do? So we came up with a concept which in 2009 was completely new, completely radical, which was equity crowdfunding online. We did it before it even existed.
You say we, take it. You got on that plane that day with no money, your company potentially insolvent, and you came up with this idea on that plane. There was no Wi-Fi, so it was you. Yeah. And then you had to get your team behind you to make it happen. But it was you, right? You invented crowdfunding in that moment, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you had money, you wouldn't have done.
Exactly. And for us, it's so much better. So if I look at our business now, we have got 220,000 crowdfunded investors. We've used that to raise over 80 million around the planet. But for me, it's a whole new business model for the 21st century, a business model that shortens the distance between ourselves and the people who enjoy the beer that we make, that takes them on this journey with us. And one of the things I love most about our business is the community of Equity Punk shareholders that we have.
Just quickly on the community, how do you communicate with your community?
We've got a Equity Punk forum online where I post almost every single day, where our community posts. We do emails, we do events, we do an AGM. We just opened a new site in Wandsworth on Thursday of last week, just outside London. The first day of any site is for Equity Punks only. So I was there, hung out, had beers with Equity Punks, got real-time feedback about what they like that we're doing, what they've got concerns about, what they'd like to see us do as a business. So it's just an amazing way to get feedback on everything we do.
You're one of the most popular AGMs as well. I know 15,000 people turned up to your last one, right? So
15,000 people to AGM.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Can you get that army to flood the comments and fight back against the negative people when we put this podcast up? You know, like I feel like the army clearly believes in you. They've invested in you. They see the vision. They're 25% shareholder, right? Yeah, that's why they're 25% owner in your company. Yeah. Get them to join.
Do you think we're going to get negative comments?
Definitely. People are skeptical. They think it's all about the money. They think it's all about you building your company. I see it already in the content that's out there. And so I don't know. Can you leverage the people that believe in you to fight with you?
I'm sure we can. I mean, if people said it was all about the money. So if this was all about the money, I would have checked out 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. I'd be sitting on the beach and wouldn't have to, like, if this was all about the money, I wouldn't be getting up insanely excited every single morning about trying to build the best business I can, about trying to showcase business first for good, trying to build this with our team. So if it was all about the money, I wouldn't be here. Like, I just wouldn't.
Playing devil's advocate, by the way, the point that people then make is, well, Elon Musk could do the same, but power feeds power, right? Give me more power. I know that's not you. I'm just trying, how do you counter argue that?
I mean, so loads of people that don't know me have an opinion about me. So it's like, it's super odd. It's like everyone who knows me knows what I'm like as a person. And it's just like some of the things that people say, it's just like so far away from reality. But I think at times I can be quite an easy target. I'm quite high profile. I've been relatively successful. And unfortunately in the UK, I think we have a lot of kind of tall poppy syndrome, and successful people often get a far harder time in the UK than they do in other countries.
I completely agree. I mean, I lived in Hong Kong for 20 years, and in Hong Kong, people just are happy for you when you do well. Here, for some reason, and I hope it changes. I think, again, we should join forces as a community to kind of highlight people that are doing good things and show people why that's a good thing, and you shouldn't knock people down for doing that. The problem is there are some bad players. There are people that use the World Cup, for example, and the issues there to feather their own nest. They do. People use wars to feather their own nest, right? Plenty of arms companies that are encouraging wars, so they make lots of money out of it. And that's the cynical nature of what's happened now. And I think the media's to blame as well. Everything's so cynical now, isn't it? Everyone's got an angle. I guess wrapping up the podcast, I wanted to give people some value around marketing, because I think that's something people can criticize you all day long about everything they want to criticize you about, but I don't think anyone can criticize you for a second about the community build that you've done, which is revolutionary. crowdfunding model that you did, which is revolutionary, and the culture you've actually built despite the mistakes along the way that you admit, right? So how do you frame up marketing? How do you structure your marketing team? How do you get maximum marketing coverage? Like when you're sitting there brainstorming a marketing thing, how do you come up with these ideas?
So you almost never get the good idea when you're sitting down brainstorming it, but kind of sitting down and brainstorming is an important step in that process. But it could be when you're going for a run or having a shower or cooking or sitting down having a beer, but it's never, you can't usually kind of force that kind of creativity, and it kind of comes from bits and pieces of inspiration from various different places and stuff. But we have a few tests that we like to use in our company. So one of them is, for instance, can we make one of our pounds work 10 times harder than a Heineken or a Stella or a Budweiser pound? Because if we can't, then we never close that gap. So if we're spending money and getting the same return as one of our big competitors, that just doesn't work for us. So that's one of the tests we use.
How do you measure 10x? How do you measure that is a 10x return? Is it every pound spent, you get £10 back? Is it that literal?
No. It would be the effectiveness of the ad. So it could be social media impressions. It could be eyeballs in a certain thing. It could be media impressions.
And you compare that £1 to spending, say, in the newspaper to, what you get versus what you get, say, for example, on social media. Is that how do you measure 10x? I think that's something really interesting.
So it depends on the type of campaign that we're doing. So if it's a social media campaign and we're putting some spend behind it, we would take some averages for reach and impact on spend campaigns from some of our competitors, and then we look to get 10 times the amount of eyeballs, the amount of engagement, the amount of comments on it that one of our competitors got. If we were doing something like we're doing, which is a kind of blend between advertising and PR, then we'd monitor the amount of kind of total media impressions we'd got for that, and then kind of measure that versus our competitor. So it depends what we do, but that kind of 10x rule is kind of what stays in our business, and that has to be the case. Otherwise, we don't close the gap in our big competitors. Other tests that we use is, would or could another company do this? And if the answer is yes, we probably don't want to do it, because to get that 10x return, we need to push it, and we need to push it right to the line. And sometimes we push past that line, which is inevitable if you're trying to take things to the edge. But unless we do that, we don't close the gap in our big competitors as well. And we just love thinking about things differently. We love challenging the status quo. We love taking a stand for the things that we believe in. And all of those things kind of feed into our marketing, which ultimately comes back to our community and our beard and our passion for doing things differently.
Again, people listening, I think it's a really interesting formula for marketing. The 10x thing fascinates me because, ironically, I can talk about myself for a second. I don't know if you feel this, but my social media channels blew up because of hate. So I helped an ex-convict out with the idea of helping him start his own business. It turned out this ex-convict had quite a colourful history, but I just took him on face value. He's an ex-policeman who went to prison, did his time, came out and couldn't get a job and wanted to start his own business. So in my mind, the system is, if someone does the crime, they go to prison, they come out, surely they've done the crime, done the time, now they need to get back into society. And if we don't give them that, then, but I got a lot of hate for trying to help this person, because what he did, in some people's opinion, and I'm not going to weigh in on this today, but in some people's opinion is, he was not a good person, right? But we still helped him. Do you think hate drives your 10x sometimes? Do you think hate is something people could leverage as a good thing?
Interesting question. I've never thought about it, but I mean, we've always had a lot of haters as a.
If you didn't have them, you'd have 5x, I reckon. Or maybe 2x, because the haters are always louder, aren't they?
And maybe without the haters, we wouldn't have built the army of love that we have as well.
Yeah, maybe you could build a counter community, the community that love you, which you built, and then a community of haters. And hey, we're listeing,
Get them little pin badges.
Yeah, get them, that's right. Yeah.
Down with the dog.
yeah, which I think is pretty interesting. The other thing, and I'm jumping back a bit, but something you said earlier, I thought, would be really interesting. You mentioned sitting down and having an idea over beer, right? And you talked about on the, the Save the Planet, Save Humans is what it should be. It doesn't sound as good. But I think on that, couldn't you create a fund or something that says, come and sit with us, have a beer, pitch your idea that can save the planet along with us, and bring a community of people along with you to solve that problem. So you're not all on your own trying to do it.
What percentage commission do I need to pay in that idea?
It's yours. Take it. Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah, it's yours. It's your idea. I mean, if it saves the planet that my son's growing up in, I'm all for it.
I love that. It's a great suggestion.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I want to empower people to start their own businesses, because I actually think entrepreneurs are going to save the world.
I think so too.
I do.
I think so too.
There will always be entrepreneurs that will try and take it down too. So you've got your Supermans and your, all the evil equivalents. But ultimately, I think I really believe in what you're doing. But you maybe you're doing it on your own a bit too much. And I think people listening need to. I think 1 + 1 = 11, right?
I love that philosophy.
Yeah, you and Martin, you couldn't do it individually, right? You've got a co-founder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, just finalizing on that, because I think people taking this away. You've got this amazing co-founder relationship that you've had for 15 years.
Yeah. And I've known Martin since I was 12 years old as well. So I've known him for a long time.
How have you managed to make that work?
I think we both... So like Martin's been my best friend for ages. We were flatmates together at university and we just both know each other so well. Like we both know what we're both good at. We both know what we're good at as well. And like we're both trying to achieve the same thing. And we kind of had this discussion when we set up the business. And it's just like, okay, we're going to need to have lots of kind of open debates about things, because without that, you just kind of bottle up things. So we've always had those debates, but always in exactly the right way to kind of try and move the needle in the business. And we've always said to each other, if one person feels especially strongly about a thing, we will go with that view. And can honestly say we've never had a single argument since we set up the business 15 years ago. Considering the controversy, the speed of growth and all the things you've done, I think if people want a proof that you're genuine, maybe look at the partner you're with in life. Yeah. 15-year partnership where you've stayed together through thick and thin is pretty special. For people learning quickly about how a partnership structures, did you do 50-50 from the beginning? How did you do the... Yeah, we did. So straight up 50, which a lot of people, by the way, say is not a good idea, because what if you've got a conflict? You want to grow and he doesn't. You want a lifestyle business, he doesn't. So you never had to worry about conflict. You managed to... We were super aligned that we want to grow this thing as much as we can. Yeah, I did 50-50 too. And a lot of people told me that was a mistake. And I ended up marrying my business partner. So did you? I did, yeah. And we had a 5-year-old, as you know. So it all worked out. And in 21 years, 22 years, we just hit 22 years together now. So wow, yeah, and we started a business together. But I think it's interesting. The equity thing is always like, I hear people say, I'm going to start a business. I'm giving that person 30%. I'm having 70. And straight away, the dynamic's always going to be, well, you've got more responsibility than that person, haven't you? So 50-50 really makes sense at the beginning, but it's not talked about much. Yeah, I mean, for us, it totally worked, and it was the only sensible way to do it. And I know that some people try that and it doesn't work out. It just depends on individuals and circumstances. I don't think there's one kind of hard and fast rule, but for us, for me, it's been amazing to go on this journey and to build something with my best friend. Yeah, well done getting £20,000 out of a bank, by the way, in the early days. It was before the global economy went tail spinning in the 2008 crash. So I still think everyone wants the blueprint of how to get £20,000 from a bank for a business. That doesn't seem to exist anymore, that model. It's gone, right? Yeah, I think so. My dad walked into the Midland Bank. Most people listening today won't even remember the Midland Bank, and asked the bank manager for £60,000 for a business idea he had on a bit of paper, and he got it. Wow, what was the business? Building houses, but he didn't give them any ownership at the time in houses. And he said, "I'm going to buy this plot of land. I'm going to build these houses." And they said, "Sure, there's the money." He hadn't bought the land yet. Like there was no signed contract. They just, but that's gone. Yeah, it's gone. That yeah, which is a real shame. Love to bring that back. So any bank listening that wants to help entrepreneurs, let me know. Or the government. Well, isn't it like a famous quote that's like, we're here to help with the government. That's the last thing you want to hear in your business, right? Can government really help businesses? Can they really? Doesn't it all end up being the paperwork's too much work for the actual reward? Does the government help you? No, but I think the government's got an important role to play with businesses over the next couple of years, because the next couple of years is going to be very, very tough for businesses. And I don't think people are speaking about it much, but I think the next couple of years is going to be even tougher for business, even tougher for hospitality than COVID was. And unless the government step up and do more, I think we're going to see far too many business casualties over that time period with associated. So what would you do? You're the business secretary. Yeah. Any thoughts? Yeah, I would waive VAT for hospitality for the next 12 to 24 months. I would look at national insurance across some industries that are especially hit by the energy crisis and not make it so expensive to employ people so companies can continue to have people in jobs. I would look to continue to provide emergency loan funding to smaller companies to kind of help get them through. And small businesses is so vital to our economy. And then I'd look at kind of payments on things like council tax and VAT and timescales for that, and introduce a longer lead time for companies to be able to pay that, because cash flow is very, very tough. So for instance, in most of our locations, energy bills has gone from 10,000 a month to over 40,000 a month. And we're lucky. We've got a little bit of scale globally, so we can kind of blend that out. If you've just got a few locations or a location in the UK, it's almost impossible to blend that out. And I think the government needs to do more to support business.
I'm sensing a new open letter. I think that, I don't know why business secretaries aren't people that actually have businesses most of the time.
Goodness, I know.
The Grease Mog was, last time I looked, pretty scary. I'm surprised you haven't gone bolder and said what I think, which is, and I'll say it because maybe they should buy the energy companies back from the French so that we're not, the last people to get the energy at the most expensive price point. It was privatized, which I'm not totally against, but at the end it was sold to a company that doesn't have the best interests of the UK business ecosystem. So maybe take back control of the energy companies that are charging too much and making huge profits.
I think that's a very good idea.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the role that you play, I think, within the business community going forward. If you did tomorrow stop Brewdog, you said, and I wondered this, and you can tell me to sod off if you want as a question, but I wondered this. There must be conversations sometimes internally where they're like, hey, James, do you want to move on? Steve Jobs was kicked out, right? Even like, James, are you sure this is a role for you now? You don't have majority control. Does that conversation ever come up? My second part to that question is, because I'm hoping you say no to that very simply, but maybe you don't. But the second part is, if you were starting something today, my listeners today often are thinking of starting something today, what would James do?
Okay, so answer the first bit, no, never came up. Team, chairman, board, fully supportive of what myself and Martin have built so far and the vision we've got for the company going.
You're very lucky to have that, by the way. A lot of companies that have investors have shaky moments. Steve Jobs is famous for it, right? Kicked out of his own company. You built a crazy foundation there that takes you through the hard times. Something for people to listen and learn there. So second part, just for fun, indulge me. If you decided you're going to do something completely different, what would you do?
So if I wasn't doing this, first thing I would do would be take 6 months off and just go on adventure. So complete break, reset a little bit, spend as much time on the water, diving, scuba diving, free diving, seeing some sharks, traveling as I could. And then I would just look to explore a few things I was passionate about and see what I could get really passionate about. So I don't know at this moment in time, but it would have to be something I was insanely passionate about. And then it's almost a little bit of a double-edged sword, the fact that I would be starting a business then with money. And I almost wish I wouldn't have money, because if you don't have money, it forces you to be a little bit more creative, fight a little bit harder, do things a little bit differently. So I would almost kind of have to try and create an artificial scenario where the resources were super tight, because I think that forces you to be leaner, better, kind of more proactive, and kind of ultimately build a better business. But at the moment I am, for the next 5-10 years, I'm very, very much focused on this one.
Yeah, I'd love you to start a side hustle, please. I think one thing I noticed in the podcast with Steve that you said, which I resonate with a lot, is that you said, I don't know what I would do. Yeah. I don't think you should be in that position. You should have a 5-10 years from now goal on a personal level, right? Building a personal brand, starting a YouTube channel, I think it's really smart, right? And you should, because you've got a lot of value to bring to the world outside of Brewdog, right? But I guess people listening, maybe I'll put the question a different way then. What do you think people should be looking at today, business model wise or business ideas wise, inspiration wise, if they're sitting there thinking, I've got all this ability and energy, I've got no money, which by the way, I think is actually a competitive advantage. I know people that have got money, they're scared to take chance because they've got something to lose. You've got nothing to lose. Actually, it's the best time to do it. What would you, tips wise, give people to do? So I would have a little checklist that I would put any idea that I was thinking about through. So first idea would be, is there a community focus on this business? And I think the future of business is going to be more and more community focused. And I wouldn't want to be involved in a business that didn't have a community involved in it. The second one would be, is this business going to be a force for good? And I think the place for businesses which are not a force for good is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think they're going to be extinct and go the same way as the dinosaur in 5 or 10 years. So is it community focused? Can it be a force for good? Is it taking something new to the table? And then is it something I'm very passionate about? So for me to start anything, I would go through that checklist, and I would urge anyone to do the same. Community focus, force for good, taking something new to the table. Am I insanely passionate about this? And I think it's a good little guide
And if it doesn't tick one of those boxes, if you're not taking something new to the table, if you're not passionate about it, if it's not a force for good, you probably shouldn't start the business. So I would use that as a little checklist.
Love it. Turn that into a book. If you
can have that idea. I'm going to put it as a LinkedIn post, my own idea, about a week from now by accident. But if you went to work for someone today, of all the companies out there, maybe with this list you're profiling here, is there anybody that stands out or a company that stands out and says, I would work for this person, I would work for this company, and this is why? I could never work for anyone. I would be a complete disaster. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs because they're simply unemployable. And I've always had a problem with authority, always had to kind of do things my own way. So me as an employee of anyone would just be a complete stone cold disaster.
You were a sea captain, right?
I was a sea captain, yes.
And in a way, you had your own boat and your own crew.
Yeah.
But you did work for someone else.
Yeah.
You enjoyed it?
It was my dad, so yeah.
But if it wasn't your dad, you still would have enjoyed it, I think.
Yeah.
So this is a really interesting thing I'd dig down in for a second. So a lot of people say, oh, not everyone could be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, well, would you stop being an entrepreneur then? Would you like to go work for someone else and have your destiny decided by someone else, right? And so a lot of people that have become an entrepreneur, in my opinion, for more than a year, the best thing to find out whether or not you should be an entrepreneur or not is go and ask them how they feel. And I think 95% of people actually desperately don't want to go back and work for someone else, right? Unless that boat has a purpose that makes it worth them being on that boat. Right. In your case, your story is, you know, your crew, camaraderie, friendship, beer. Right. So my translation of this, and I'd love your opinion, is like, you could go work for someone else if the purpose, the community, maybe some equity, all these things were given as part of the deal, then you could.
I don't think I could. I would just want to build. So for me, being like building something is what is exciting. And if I was working for someone else, I wouldn't be building something in the same way. So if I wasn't doing this in 5-10 years time, I'm going to build something else. But that owning a thing and building a thing is important.
You represent everything I try to teach people. So I'm deliberately being the opposite side of the coin for a minute. You are exactly what I tell everybody. Once you try it, you will never go back. It will be hard at the beginning, gets easier over time, actually. Whereas working for someone else is easier at the beginning, gets harder over time. But I just want to test it as I've got someone who's I'm normally arguing your side of the fence, right? But let's say Elon Musk calls you up tomorrow and says, James, love what you've done at Brewdog.
Yeah.
Come and run Twitter.
Yeah.
You'd say no.
I'd say no.
James, come and work at Twitter, and every other day you can promote Brewdog on Twitter.
Thanks, Elon. You can give me a discount on my next Tesla. We can have a beer sometime, but I will not be working for Twitter.
I give you $2 billion and you can promote your beer company every day on Twitter.
I'm starting on Monday.
So is it all about the package? Is that ultimately what it's about?
I think they would run significantly more losses if they were paying me $2 billion on the platform. I don't
know. He's already got $44 billion. What's another $2 billion? I mean, I think they're losing. He said $5 million a day on food or something like that.
It's wild. It's wild, but for me, I mean, that's a stupid number. It's never going to happen. There's never a scenario that I don't want to be running my own business.
Again, I love it because I think it's something that I believe as well, and I want people to feel that. I want people to feel that sense of control over their own destiny, right? I think that's the thing. People say having a job is safe, and I understand it. And by the way, I respect you saying it, James, because you've got 3,000 employees, right? So I think all of your employees just heard you say, well, maybe they should work for themselves. But I think what you're saying, my translation is that definitely have control of your own destiny, right? And you can inside a company. I think you can, but you need to be awake to do that, right? And that's that's the only thing I would say. Like, I have a lot of people working for me. They all have equity in the business.
Which is amazing.
Which is what you did as well. And I think it's very hard to do it when the business has got to... You gave $100 million. Pounds, £100 million. It's a lot more than dollars. Even today, it's still a lot more than dollars. It's a lot of money to give away. Now, at the beginning of the business, which is what I did, I've given equity to the operating people at the beginning. It's much easier to do that when it's at the beginning because it's valueless compared, right? To give away $100 million, that must have been a big decision for you and Martin.
It was a big decision. It was actually myself. So Martin didn't do it. It was something that I did, and it's something I felt passionate about. And I wanted to make sure that all of our team felt significant ownership of the business. So we were building this thing together, and every salaried team member, it's £30,000 of equity a year over the next 4 years.
Crazy.
So over 4 years, it's £120,000. But if we get this right as a company, if we double in size, it could be 240. It could be beyond that. So it's a life-changing sum of money. But that is because I want to build something that is different and is not how normal companies work. So it's unconventional, it's unorthodox, it focuses on our team, it focuses on our people. And ultimately, I think we become a stronger business because I've done this unconventional, bold thing.
Yeah. Must have been an interesting conversation with your co-founder as well. Like, I'm going to give £100 million away of equity. And okay, good for you, mate.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Fully supportive.
Go for it. I also think, by the way, listening to your story, at some point you should just start a law firm. I'm sure the paperwork alone on that idea must have been big. The paperwork on the crowdfunding I know was big. You know. One of the big lessons I had building a business was getting the trademark. Did you ever have any problem with Brewdog and trademark and any of those sorts of things?
No, not so much.
It was fine. Yeah, because it's quite a unique name, I guess.
The name is name is inherently unique.
Yeah,
so
but you trademark it all over the world, right? You had to make sure. That's quite a big expense as well. Yeah. So I guess maybe I'll close a question from one of my community, and I think it was on Telegram, Maria Antonio. I hope I got your name right there. Dyslexic, read it wrong. But she asked this question, and I wanted to get your opinion. On the days that you feel like giving up, how do you keep going?
Never feel like giving up. Like never.
Is that genuine? You never feel like giving up?
No,
never?
No.
Even when all this hate comes on you and you're like, what is the point of all this? You never, even once?
No.
I can't believe it. And I'm a passionate, purposeful entrepreneur, and I've definitely thought about giving up many times.
I'm just so committed to this business, so committed to what we're trying to do, so committed to the team. And like, we're just half done. And when I look at this business, and a question I often get asked by journalists, what do you feel about what you've built so far? And for me, it's almost indifference, because what I'm excited about is not what we've built so far. It's like, where can we go from here?
Right.
And we've given ourselves a platform, a scale, and global infrastructure where we can make a significant dent in the global beer market. And that's what I'm excited about. That's what I get out of bed snappy and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about every single morning. And there's going to be tough days. You're going to get kicks. You're going to get knocks. And if it was easy, everyone would do it. So I think I'm quite resilient. We've had some challenges. We've had some tough times. But have I ever felt like quitting? Absolutely not. And I'm very determined to build to make sure this business fulfills its destiny and becomes what we know and it can be.
I have never heard it before. I've interviewed over 200 people. I've never heard anyone say it. And I believe you. That's the crazy thing. And I can't imagine. Do you know what, though? You've highlighted something I think, again, my listeners might appreciate. The one major human strength that no other species has is the ability to forward project. So we can predict that I better not go outside today because I might get a cold or I might get hit by a bus. And that can stop people, fear, right? But it's a talent if you use it right. What you're doing with it, you're saying you're projecting the potential. And that's making you excited. And most people project the failure.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where they're using that superpower the wrong way. So you've tapped into something really, really powerful there. People project what could happen, positively could happen. You can almost get through any pain that the business might be causing you in any given day. It's quite mind-blowingly interesting. I hope people write that down. You know, how do you always stay positive though? How do you make sure it's always a positive? I mean, you could get cancelled tomorrow and the company go bankrupt because of your controversial marketing.
I think I've been cancelled 5 times in the last few years, to be honest. I'm just inherently, almost naively optimistic as a human.
Right. But when you read the comments, you don't feel down. None of it gets to you.
I don't read the comments.
Oh, is that the answer?
I don't read the comments.
Do you have a strategy like that? Is that you just don't read them, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because we know the people who love us. We know the people who care about us. Like, comments online are inherently negative. There's like more and more hate online. Why expose myself to that?
It's interesting. So I have a different strategy. I actually, I like to be liked. Yeah. And so I do read the comments, and I initially got really hurt by them. And then I broke it into 3 things. It might be interesting to you and the listeners, don't know. But the first is a non-person. So no profile picture, no bio. I laugh because I think it's my competition or someone just, who is jealous. I block those or ignore those.
Your mom.
Maybe, yeah. I do think she's from time to time goes on there saying she is all right and she's not.
An ex.
Yeah, an ex. Yeah, I've only got 1 or 2 that will probably play. But then I've got the person who has read the comment of someone else, right? Or they've misunderstood. Okay, I call them undecided voters, these people. They're real people. They've got a profile, they've got a story. I see a picture of them and their family. I work on those people. Like when they tell me that I'm only doing this for my own self and to make myself famous, I'm like, I don't need to be famous. I could be on a beach taking it easy every day for the rest of my life. I don't need to do it. I actually work on those people. I enjoy understanding what it is they've misunderstood, understand what we're actually doing, and make them vote for us. And when I've converted them, they end up being the biggest fans. Really hard to do it.
Yeah.
The third one is just people that just generally will always hate. They don't mind saying it. They do it actually to get attention themselves. Right, I got a lot of people like this. Ironically, I had a newspaper journalist recently write a really horrible article about me and then slagging off government policy, which has nothing to do with me as government policy, tried to tie me into the two things. And that story in the Telegraph got me verified on Instagram. So, you know, that hate can be used and turned like a superpower back at them, right?
Absolutely.
But I think there's two strategies. Ignore it, which I think is not a bad one, and focus on the people that do believe in your vision and put energy into those people. Because I think sometimes I waste too much energy on those negative people. Right? You can, that's true, right? I am in awe of you and I'm excited to see where you go. I think you're not halfway through. I think you're 5% through. And I think the next 40 years are going to be very, very exciting. Do you work-life balance? How do you get that right?
I go for work-life integration as opposed to work-life balance.
Oh, we're so similar. And my son's involved in all of my content, for example, right? Get them involved. Yeah. Another great lesson for people listening. I think that work-life balance, this work should be something different from your life. No. You personify that, by the way. I feel like you're living your work and I really admire you. Thank you so much for giving time to us today and sharing all your knowledge. It's been an absolute honor.
Thanks for having me. Huge fan of what you do and the mission behind it. So hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Thank you, James. Thanks.
Thanks.